Alright, let's dig deeper into this mystery of the massive stone jars in Bada Valley, Indonesia. These jars, known locally as kalambas, are ancient artifacts found in Lore Lindu National Park. This park covers a whopping 2,200 square kilometers, but it's the jars that really get folks scratching their heads. These stone jars are ancient and no one really knows how old they are. Some estimates say they could be anywhere from 1,000 to 5,000 years old. That's a pretty big range, don't you think? What's even more intriguing is that the stones used to make these jars aren't from around here. They were hauled in from somewhere else, but where? And how did they move these enormous stones without modern technology? The locals don't claim any historical connection to the jars, adding to the mystery. The term kalambas translates to bathtubs for a king. But honestly, can you imagine a king needing hundreds of stone bathtubs in a remote valley? Plus, these jars were covered with heavy stone lids, making the bathtub theory even less likely. Scientists have another idea. Maybe they were used as tombs, but even this theory has its problems. Some jars are too shallow to hold a body. Some jars have an internal ridge that splits them into two sections with just a slight depth difference. So, what were they used for? And where did the stones come from? How did they transport these huge stones to such a remote area? To make things even more baffling, the lids of these jars have carvings of animals that don't match any local species. Some lids have human-like figures or faces, and others have perfect horizontal lines. Imagine trying to carve perfect lines into stone without the tools we have today. Some people think the jars were made using a stone softening technique that let the creators shape them like clay. But how did they do that? How did they make these huge stone jars without modern technology? One popular theory is that these jars were used for some kind of mineral separation process, given the high concentration of gold in the area. Some jars even have burn marks, possibly from melted metal or gold. Could this be the work of an advanced prehistoric civilization with technology we can't even fathom today? Adding another twist to the story, similar stone jars have been found in Laos, about 1,900 miles away from Bada Valley. This site in Laos is known as the Plain of Jars, and it has around 3,000 stone jars spread over more than 90 sites. Some of these jars are up to 10 feet tall and weigh several tons. They're carved from sandstone, granite, and limestone. Most have a flat or slightly convex bottom, and some have decorative carvings, although many are plain. The Plain of Jars has its own dark history. During the Secret War in the 1960s, American forces bombed the area heavily, destroying many of the jars and leaving unexploded bombs scattered around. This makes the area dangerous to explore. Clearing these bombs is a slow process, and fewer than 10% of the jars have been formally investigated. Despite ongoing efforts, the area still claims lives each year due to accidental detonations. Initially, archaeologists thought the jars were about 2,000 years old, dating back to the Iron Age. But a 2021 study suggests they could be at least 3,000 years old. The mystery of who built them and why remains unsolved. The locals have a legend about giants who created the jars to store and drink rice wine after a victorious battle. It's a colorful story, but it doesn't really answer the scientific questions. Recently, researchers have discovered even more jar sites similar to the ones in Laos and Bada Valley, Indonesia, showing that these jars are part of a larger network. In the Assam Forest in India, about 500 miles away from the Plain of Jars in Laos, and more than 2,500 miles from Bada Valley in Indonesia, researchers have found around 700 jars in an area spanning 113 square miles. These jars come in different shapes and sizes. Some are tall and cylindrical, while others are partly or fully buried in the ground. The jars were carved from sandstone boulders, possibly mined locally. But who were these people, and how did they manage such an impressive feat? Nicholas Skopal, an archaeologist part of the research team, mentioned that they've barely scratched the surface. The dense jungle and forests make exploration difficult. Every time they venture out, they find new sites. This suggests there are more jars hidden in the region, waiting to be discovered. The jars in Assam were carved from sandstone boulders, perhaps mined at a quarry in Assam or a nearby creek or riverbed. The discovery is still recent, and researchers are still trying to figure out their age. But they're starting to see a connection between the jars in Indonesia, Laos, and India. This suggests a cultural relationship between these regions. Most of the jars found in Assam are in poor condition due to forest growth, burning, and local road-cutting projects. They vary in shape, size, decoration, and condition. The jars found in Assam and Laos share a lot of similarities in size and structure, but there are some differences too. The Assam jars tend to be more bulbous, while the ones in Laos are more cylindrical. So, what's the deal with these stone jars? Were they made by a lost advanced civilization, or an unknown Stone Age culture? The jars, with their mysterious origins and purposes, remain one of the most fascinating archaeological puzzles of our time. It's like a detective story where the clues are scattered across different countries and buried in history. And the more we uncover, the more questions we seem to have. The jars stand as silent witnesses to a past we're still trying to understand.